This is an SABC News presentation.
Hello masipoti semakhaya nakwindawo ngendawo enibukeleni kuzo. Siyanamkela kwisiqendu sethu sale veki senkqubo yethu Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. We are broadcasting to you live on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Igama lam nguSisanda Jonas. Nanjengesiqhelo kaloku babukeli ekuhambeni kwethuba siza kunivulela iminxeba kuba nani nivakalise ezenu imbono. Ngabe ke ubhala lo nombolo yethu apha e-studio ethi 011 714 6918 okanye ethi 714 6919. Ungasithumelela ne-SMS ngokuthi uthumele igama elithi right ku-33726 ukanti ungasithumelela ne-email kwidilesi yethu ethi consumer@sabc.co.za. Ungasebenzisa ke nendlela zonxibelelwano zalamaxesha ngokuthi usindwendwele kwi-Facebook page yethu ethi Yilungelo Lakho okanye uthumele i-tweet ku@yilungelo. Ever received a random call from a sweet-talking consultant telling you that you have won some competition or your name has been selected for a prize? And upon arrival, you discover you've been lured to a presentation offering you investment opportunities or a holiday club membership at a giveaway subscription? Well, sadly, many consumers are falling for these schemes. And after signing on the dotted line, the unsuspecting consumers are trapped in contracts they cannot get out of while their bank accounts are being drained. A self-employed consumer from Velkom, Lisa Nyaumave, is one of those who has been caught off guard.
Na pina na ninina eso sisaga se-Flexi Club ethembisa uluntu ngamathuba eholide kodwa bakhangeleka bangafumaneki naphina xa bathengi benengxaki. La ngamava adibene nawo uLisa Nyamuwave. uLisa wagagana nabantu be-Flexi Club eyokutha egaraji. Lo mntu wakwa-Flexi Club wamnika i-scratch card esaveza ukuba unenombolo ezimenza ukuba azuza amabhaso. Kulapho ke ngoko azokumenyela kwesi sakhiwo nomyeni wakhe bezokuphulaphula yonke inkcukacha bade batyikitywa nezivumelwano. Ukuzibandakanya ne-Flexi Club kuye kwanyanzeleka ukuba ahlawule R200 nalapho aza kuhlawula R680 ngenyanga. Zonke ezi zithembiso ziquka iholide zeli loMzantsi Afrika nokuba kuninina kodwa uzokuthi qwa xa kuza kuxhuzulwa kwi-account yakhe.
So I decided with my husband to know we want to cancel a membership in a Flexi Club. When I phoned them go June, they told me to know this Flexi Club, it is binding. I have signed, I cannot cancel.
Unyamuwave lo uhambe nathi silulungelo lakho wasisa apho atyikitye khona isivumelwano sifike kungekho mntu we-Flexi Club. Akayedwanga uLisa kweli phulo elityholwa ngobuqhophololo. U-Anisha Tladi wagqejwa idumela ngophiyo le-R6,500 ethathwe kwi-credit card.
Bele banka credit card yaka ne. Bele banka credit card yaka ba fihla banka di-numbers tsa teng. Ha ke sa hopola wena ba eswa ipile hona moo ba ne bana le metjhini ba tsamaya ka metjhini.
Sililungelo lakho sifonele kaninzi office ze-Flexi Club ephaya in-town Cibukuhle eThekwini sade senza nembalelwano ye-emails kodwa saphoswa ngaphana ngapha ngengxaki kaLisa. Ongumcommissioner kwimicimbi yabathengi uMamudupi Muhlala uthi umthetho i-Consumer Protection Act uyabavumela abathengi ukuba bayivale i-contract xa bengonelisekanga ngesithuba seentsuku ezingama-20.
Feel that it is unfair that consumers should not be entitled to the rights that they have in terms of the Consumer Protection Act. But most importantly, you find that a lot of consumers, even when they do cancel, they have paid deposits and they've made certain contributions and they want their refunds. This is one of the issues the Commission is looking into because we believe that consumers should actually be entitled to get their refunds if they paid a deposit and they have not gotten full value for the service that they paid for.
Abenkonzo zemali bagxeka inkqubo yezomthetho ngokushiya abathengi enyanyeni.
That each system here is letting us down when it comes to consumer rights. Because number one, if you claim I've got a contract now, you need to keep me posted on monthly basis as to how much you're deducting from me, how much were you ought to deduct. And now that you've been deducting, what is it that I qualify for? But instead, as soon as we bind a land or we sign it, they disappear.
Abako-National Credit Regulator bathi noxa lamaphulo aququzelela iholide avunye ngokusesikweni kodwa nobuqhophololo.
Indlela abenza abatrakta ngayo abantu yiyo ke ngoku esinengxaki yanayo because ayi-regulator city kuba bazoxelela abantu bamabeze bawine iprice ethile xa befika kuloo price le sekugqibeleni sekuthiwa mabakitye isivumelwano. Ngoko ke ingxaki ifumanayo kufumanisa uba ngoba xa basayinisa ezi contracts abantu bona they don't understand uba ezi contract kuthethwa ntoni na ngazo.
I-National Consumer Commission ithi i-Flexi Club neminye imibutho lolu hlobo yanyanzeleka ukuba iyenze icace imiqathango yezivumelwano. Xelikweni le mithetho ibe bakhulula abathengi kodwa kusekho amashishini angagcini imithetho yaye nathe gqolo exhaphaza abathengi. Yiyo loo nto kubalulekile kubathengi abafana noLisa Nyamuwave no-Anisha Tladi kufuneka bawazi ngokupheleleyo amalungelo abo. Themba Makeleni, Yilungelo Lakho, eGauteng.
Yilungelo Lakho, and that background story was, of course, from our producer, Themba Makeleni. And now to take our discussion further on dodgy holiday club schemes, timeshares and contracts to which unsuspecting consumers are lured into, let's now extend a warm welcome to Thulani Qiti, a financial advisor from TQ Financial Consultancy. Samkele no Jacqueline Boucher, she is a legal advisor from the National Credit Regulator. And finally, Samkele no Jeremiah Mutiba yena osandukubekwa njengomkomishinala omtsha wekomishoni emele amalungelo abathengi in National Consumer Commission. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this afternoon. Let me start with you, Thulani. Busoyivile insight yethu nebalisa ke ngebali lika Mamulisa yena osevelcom. Ingaba esi scams sithetha ngaso kanye as holiday membership clubs ezithetha ngazo ingxaki engakanani lena, how widespread is it?
Look, ma'am, in general it is a big problem. Ingxaki ikhona across the board. Okay, so e-consumer always, you're always exposed to such. That's number one. Number two, today I'd like to be biased also. Also, as consumers, we've got a responsibility because, especially in our society, into that is too good to be true. We seem as standards on those and we go ahead and commit sign without even reading a thing.
Okay, so ukwazi uphinda ke sichaphazele kanye kuloo ndawo. But okwangoku ndifuna uza kuwe Jeremiah ndikubuze wena ingabe ezingxaki zabantu ezithi zifike kuni ofisini zingakanani na? Again, I'm asking you the same question I asked Thulani. How widespread is it? Because your office deals with such complaints.
Well, obviously, this is quite a concern to the National Consumer Commission. Because of the complaints that we have received from the timeshare industry, they are quite significant in number. And not only with respect to the numbers, I think the redress, or rather the recourse that normal consumer would expect to acquire, it is often not forthcoming when engaging with schemes. And in instances where you are actually able to get consumers to actually cancel these agreements, it comes at great consequences. The trend is that you can only be released of such an agreement if you were to forfeit whatever substantial amount that one would have deposited. In fact, I could say typically one would be expected to either to pay the substantial amount that would have gone to the so-called product of the scheme itself, and one would have to be updated with the levies that will have to be payable either seasonally or annually. And we're talking 50,000, 100,000 rands of rents. And the unfortunate thing is that, the target market, the average consumer that is actually wooed into this particular practice, it's an unsophisticated consumer. It's someone that probably semi-trade, your typical blue-collar employees, your farmers, your teachers, your policemen, who as a result of pressure tactics that are used at these particular presentations, very often held at very outstanding hotels and a glossy presentation, are actually used to actually lure these people, and they actually promise prices that are supposed to be won at this particular presentation. So it becomes very difficult for an average individual to actually be able to apply their mind and be independent and be able to judge that and whatever is presented to them is something that probably is worth the money that, or rather the paper that is written on. And in essence, we're talking about inherently contracts here, which are very complex in nature, and which are very costly. And the very fact that in general they're actually perpetual. You know, you have this particular contract that you're bound to invariably for the rest of your life.
Because now you've touched on contracts, and with the number of complaints that have come through to you, within
In fact, it's quite generic. Everyone, I would say 99.9% of the people who would come to the commission seeking redress would be either to cancel it, and they would actually be crying foul that whoever was actually selling, the promoter or the marketer who actually presented this product to them, literally misrepresented the information. He told them about, recently we had that during the 2010 World Cup, prior to that, people were being sold holiday destinations in around the country to say you buy into this particular scheme, and when tourists from all over the world will be coming to the country, you would have an asset that which you can actually use to actually rent it out to these people, from which you'll be able to generate an income.
All right.
Majority of that didn't realize to be the truth, and then consumers are ended up being trapped in this contract that which they're not able to get out of them.
Jackie, this is not just a local problem, but globally you find that these schemes, they thrive in a way. What has been your perception? In fact, your offices again, what kind of complaints are you getting?
Generally, what we've seen that comes through, and I can reiterate what both my colleagues have said here, is that consumers get trapped into aggressive marketing, misrepresentation. They get excited by the lure of great destinations at a great hotel, and they get excited and they just sign. The problem is, though, that once the complaints have come, consumers have perhaps spoken to the agent and were misrepresented. The general thing is to say, if you think about this and tomorrow you decide you don't want to go ahead with this anymore, we'll tear up the contract. Just give me a call. And then the agent can never be found again. Unfortunately, though, consumers are not reading their agreements, and the agreements are saying in writing to a specific address. So we see that consumers are maybe getting caught up in emotional buying and are trapped in something where they are severely misrepresented what actually is the truth, and don't realize that the spoken word is overridden by the written word, and they're bound and can't quite get out.
Thulani, you are from TQ Financial Consultancy.
Okay, our involvement is that eventually with the contracts, whilst these consumers are not happy with them and they're not paying the money, maybe to go and change their bank account, so these guys cannot debit anymore. What they tend to do then, they go ahead and blacklist them, whereby they can take a listing in a form of a default, but majority of them is normally judgments. And now you find these judgments are taken within each restriction that is not that you're not based in. It's always your Durban, it's always your Cape Town and so forth. So this is where now as TQ Consultancy we come in, because what we look at Sichonga into the circumstances that were placed before us, before each judgment was taken, was the proper procedure that was followed and so forth. Because before I can actually take a judgment against Wena, I'll have to summon you to court, number one. And prior to that, I'll have to notify you that, listen, you have not paid me for 3 months. What is going on and so forth. So this is where we come in, because most of these listings, they're all unlawful listings.
All right. For now, let's take an ad break. But before we do that, let me remind you that you can send us an email to consumer@sabc.co.za. You can also visit our Facebook page, Yilungelo Lakho, or send us a tweet to @Yilungelo. Please join us after this. We are discussing attractive holiday clubs membership schemes, timeshares and other dodgy contracts into which unsuspecting consumers are lured into, then find themselves trapped. Now, to take part, please call us on 011-714-6918 or 714-6919, or send us an email to consumer@sabc.co.za. You can also SMS your thoughts to 33726. Alternatively, visit our Facebook page, Yilungelo Lakho, or send us a tweet to @Yilungelo. Jeremiah, let me come to you and ask you, how often do you get such complaints?
Well, on a regular basis, I mean, just to simply respond to your question. And when you look at our trends in terms of the nature of complaints that are being dealt with by the NCC, the National Consumer Commission, timeshare happens to be one of amongst the highest and the significant ones that the Commission has to, has to deal with on a daily basis. It's not can be described as to be a one-off or an isolated complaint on a daily basis. And it's not just from a specific region, it being in Gauteng. They are drawn from all over the country, from whichever province that can think of, either from the Eastern Cape, KZN, or Western Cape, or Limpopo for that particular matter.
Jackie, but there seems to be challenges when it comes to this particular issue in terms of your investigations.
Particularly when you look at these kind of agreements, and the National Credit Regulator also receives quite a few complaints. The National Credit Act and the Consumer Protection Act actually would need to go hand in hand in terms of the nature of these agreements. The National Credit Act would then apply to the credit-related part of the agreement, the charges, cancellation within the 5 days, and perhaps the remedy of surrendering the goods. Whereas the Consumer Protection Act would then obviously go as far as, are the consumers receiving use of the goods? Was it, the misrepresentation when entering into the agreement? And we go hand in hand in terms of plain language, representation, and all that sort of stuff. So both the NCC and the NCR would need to work hand in hand. But yes, it does become a problem because each party's jurisdiction only goes that far.
You find that as a challenge as well?
Look, on a number of occasions when the operators, or rather the service providers, are confronted with allegations of misrepresentations, with allegations that either the terms in the agreements are actually not really fair, because the National Consumer Protection Act makes provision that one may not present contract to consumers which are inherently unfair, which are heavily biased against consumers, or contracts terms that perhaps may be construed that which there are certain misleading information, or there are certain disclosures which are very material that are not actually brought to the fore. We're often being challenged to say we're out of jurisdiction because there's a credit component to that. And insofar as that is concerned, another regulator needs to come into the fray. So there seems to be exploiting what appears to be the gap between two regulators, which in my view, it does not exist. I think it's not sustainable that this type of contract can be out there. And I think more often than ever, a need is beginning to emerge that there has to be some kind of a proactive investigation, perhaps collectively as regulators or individually, so that we need this particular problem in the bud.
And we do have Innocent from Mpumalanga. Innocent, wamkelekile nkqubeni? Innocent?
Yebo njani ma?
Ndiyaphila, buti kunjani kuwe?
Ngiyaphila.
Thetha kunye nathi, Innocent?
Iproblem lekhona.
Mamela, Innocent? Innocent, sakucela uncede. Innocent, uyandiva?
Ngiyakuva.
Sakucela uncede buti, uthobe nje ivolume ye-TV yakho.
Okay.
Enkosi kakhulu. Uthini ke kuthi namhlanje?
Iproblem i-one ukuthi bantu bakithi abakhoni kufunza ama-contract ngendlela lefanele. Bajahela tintfo letiphambili kunabo. So inkinga lekhona leyo lesihlangabetana nayo, especially la eSouth Africa.
All right.
And futhi into lekhona ngicabanga ukuthi kubalekile ukuthi umuntu athathe ukuthi angeke awine i-competition ngaphandle kokuyingenela, ngoba kuba inkinga kakhulu ebantwini bakithi ukuthi bangenela i-competition bawine into labangayadi. So kuba nema-challenges lakhona futhi.
All right, enkosi kakhulu ke Innocent. Sibuthatha kolo hlobo na uba singakwazi uthi will be lured into this contract.
Yeah, because what I just want to do now, I just want to break down these contracts. Because initially, these people, they will go to malls and stuff. And believe me, I've seen them in action. And it's only a piece of paper, okay? Now, you signing on the piece of paper, that is stipulating whatever, the competition and so forth. Now, the main contract only comes afterwards when a complaint has been lodged. Okay. Now we need to look into these contracts because number one, which are our telephones are recorded and so forth. If you want to dispute a contract, where is that telephone conversation? Can we draw that up so that it can come out of this? But in most cases, this contract is only a piece of paper. That thing explains exactly what is the competition about. Now only then you complain, the actual contract will then come out. Yes, so yes, as the caller has said, they like those ezilula, as I've said it as we're opening, we like those ezilula, we just want to get anything that comes easily, but we need to be careful in doing so.
Just to follow up from what he has just said, I think what he has actually mentioned is quite critical, because normally at this presentation, consumers are presented with a membership form, essentially so, to say, you complete this particular form and then you become eligible to win a prize. And then there would be what they call a purchase agreement, which would actually highlight certain key points that which a consumer is expected to initiate, and then they would sign. But one critical aspect about the membership together with the purchase agreement, it is subject to a constitution and the scheme's rules. Before me here, I don't want to mention the name of the scheme, a particular scheme, but I'm seated with a document which is about, it's a 7-page document, it's an 8-page document. And the constitution is actually formulated of about 18 clauses. Now, the scheme's rules has got as little as about 15 clauses. Now, even a qualified attorney who's an expert in the field, it would actually require me at least a day or two to go peruse all this particular document. Let alone that at the mall, the type of a consumer that will be targeted will be someone that would absolutely be miles away in terms of getting any understanding of what is this all about.
Yes.
My just quick reading of the Constitution, there's a provision that talking about cancellation, it does not make any escape rule for a consumer. It almost creates a prerogative or a discretion for the scheme operators to say, as and when they like, they can release you from the contract. But as a consumer, once you sign that particular membership form, by the way, that which is presented to you without even privy to the Constitution, you are hooked by the Constitution. And you can only be privy to the Constitution when it's posted to you after a month. By that time, the debit order has already gone through. And you're already hooked.
All right, we do have Connie on the line. She is from Gauteng. Connie, wamkelekile nkqubeni? Connie? Connie akekho ke emnxebeni. Okay, hoping that Connie will call us again. It means that the conduct now of these schemes is just unscrupulous.
Absolutely. I cannot even describe it more better than that. It's unscrupulous, underhanded, that, the inherent concept in the Consumer Protection Act that say a contract that is in writing, that, a consumer is presented to, the copy thereof must be given to consumer, and they must be given adequate opportunity to peruse it. And in instances where it may not be as clear, there should be an opportunity to go and consult with an expert, either a financial advisor or a lawyer, and only then they can then be permitted to actually sign on a dotted line.
Right.
And if there are financial implications, more importantly, they must be given a breakdown of what are the costs, particularly given the fact that, there are incremental effects onto this particular cost. The levies get to be increased, discretionary by the operators without the consent of a consumer. Consumer needs to be placed in a position to know exactly what it costs now, how is it going to cost 6 months later or a year or two later.
We do have Buyile on the line from Eastern Cape. Buyile, wamkelekile nkqubeni? Hello, Budi.
Molweni memundane.
Ndiyaphila nkosi Budi, unjani wena?
Ndiyaphila namakhondo. Nam ndinale problem A1 eka-Flexi Club, because aba bantu aba baye bafona bathi bafona from eBhayi, so ngoku bathi masidibane apha elalukeni eMagliye siphathe i-credit card, but there is nothing which is going to do kwi-credit card. Xa sifika phayana, so ndadibana naye lo mfana igaba lakhe nguTshevo, ndathi kuye no mna andifuni into mna holidays, mna I'm interested because mna ndifuna uthenga i-shares. Wathi no yena yinto right lena because bona nabo bayazithengisa i-shares. So ngoku i-presentation yakhe yaba based to kwi-shares kuba ndifuna ukuthenga i-shares, wandisayinisa ke ilantuka i-document. And then ngoku after ke ngoku, so wathi no ezi shares ezi ndizawubhatala into i-5,000. And then after 3 days, that ndisawuthi kwi-credit card yam i-12,200 bayitsalile. And then ke ngoku ndamfonela uba kanti into Tshepo ithini. So yena wathi no yena imali iye kwi-shares ezana mna bendizifuna. That okay, emveni koko bathumela i-contract abayibhale nge-Afrikaans, ndacomplaina uba mna I don't understand Afrikaans. So all and all ngoku nami I-problem yami endinayo ngu-factory club and ethi ngoku undi-blacklistile kubana bathi ngoku baye bathi funeka ndibhatale 1,200 every month of which la mfana zange athethe mna nanto ndandifuna iseza andifuni into holidays.
All right, Buyile. Enkosi kakhulu. Wheeler did touch on the name of the company, but I'd like to say that those are his views, and of course the company is not here to represent itself, but we will be speaking generally because it does seem like it's a problem, a huge problem as it is in South Africa. Please join us after this ad break. Welcome back, and we continue with our discussion. Jeremiah, let me come to you first. We do have an SMS from one of the viewers saying that they can't reach your offices. I suppose specifically on this issue as well. How do they get a hold of you?
Well, I'll just for now give you the contact details of our offices, which is Pretoria Code 012-940-4450. That is a standard call center number. Right. But we're also available on email, which is complaints@thencc.org.za. The physical address being 10 Bohemia Street, that is Barclay Office Park, Technopark Centuria. The code is 0157.
Before the ad break, we were speaking to Ubuyile. What do you have to say to that?
Look, it sounds to me that Buyile is one of the victims of the pressure sales tactics where they were he was invited to this particular presentation, and that with him he must carry the credit card, and then he's going to be purchasing into shares. One thing that has to actually emphasize is that buying into a holiday club is not an investment for any financial gains. It is not an investment to buy properties. It is not certainly an investment to buy shares. What your scheme operators will tell you is that it's an investment into a holiday in future. So what should be clearly in your mind is that you're buying an opportunity to go on holiday somewhere. It's not something it's not something that can be translated into cash, because I also must emphasize the fact that even if you would have purchased that particular items, there are no guarantees. The schemes, they themselves will actually confirm that there are not guarantees of selling it to somebody else.
Maybe after this caller, we'll look at the legitimacy of these schemes and how do you know what to look out for. But for now, we do have a caller on the line, Ukoni from Gauteng. Koni, wamgelekile nkubeni?
Hello.
Hello, Connie.
I need help. I'm in the middle of this holiday shares point thing, which I'm busy paying for. Now I've got a problem because I want to surrender. How do I go about surrendering? Because I'm now on pension. I cannot afford to go on paying on this thing.
All right. Thanks, Connie, for the call. Jackie, you want to answer Connie?
Yes, I would like to tell her, in terms of the National Credit Act, you are allowed to surrender these goods. The problem that we've seen as the National Credit Regulator, because surrendering under any type of credit agreement, is that there's not really a buyback. There are not people that are very interested in buying second-hand points. So consumers are generally strapped with these points get sold off for a very low price, and you still sit with the debt without even having any sort of rights now. And then you still need to pay off the money that's left over. Generally, what a consumer should do is try and see, because it's a perpetual agreement, to try and see, can they get someone else themselves to buy it?
There's points.
Can they see if they can perhaps donate it to someone that they know who's interested in it? The surrendering just generally doesn't help consumers.
Jeremiah, these are just some of the complaints that have been coming through. People talking about the cost being too high, the misinformation, as well as the issue of points where people want to sell them but they can't do that. How do you come in and help those people?
As I said earlier on, to say, look, there's perhaps a need that, the very aspect that you just alluded to of the fact that this thing cannot be disposed of. You cannot really, literally, surrender it. It's quite a very crucial aspect, especially within the context of the Consumer Protection Act, the right of consumers to actually get out of contract. I'll bring you to the provisions in the Act that allows consumers to actually get out of what we call fixed-term contract, that you are entitled to give a notice to a supplier over a period of 20 days once you have entered into that should then prompt the supplier to actually release you from the contract. The supplier can only claim what is called reasonable cost. Reasonable cost would be whatever services or product, the value of the product that the supplier has delivered to you, then they're able to actually say to debit whatever amount that you've paid to them against that. But quite strikingly, in most instances, we find consumers have hardly even gone on holiday. So it becomes extremely very difficult to actually see how a supplier can then say they've actually suffered losses in respect of certain services that have been made available to you. But quite importantly, I think consumers need to understand the very nature of timeshare, how they operate. Because it's not just an agreement between a consumer on one hand and a scheme on the other. On the side of suppliers, we normally have three parties. You have got a promotional entity, you've got a developer entity. A developer entity is the link between a holiday resort together with the right to actually occupy space. The scheme will be the ones who administer this particular pool, who will be the one who are collecting the premiums with regard to the shares. They'll be the ones who are collecting levies, administrative fees and the likes. And very often, consumers are actually found themselves in confrontational with the scheme. But at the very beginning, when the scheme was introduced to them, was the promoter. The promoter by that time is gone because they've got their commission and they're gone. Yes. The very reason why there's a likelihood that people are more incentivized to actually mislead consumers and to exaggerate and embellish stories about beautiful holiday resorts is because of all they want is to have a signature on the dotted line. And once they have that, it guarantees them that once that particular contract it has gone past the 5-day cooling off period, then they get their commission and they disappear.
All right, we do have a caller on the line, Lisa from Free State. Lisa, welcome to the program. Lisa.
Hello?
Hi, Lisa. Please talk to us.
Okay, my problem is that I have not paid the membership fees with Flexi Club. They told me that I'll be a member once I've paid the membership fees. So now I didn't pay the money. Now they're attracting me that they're going to blacklist me.
All right. Is that all, Lisa?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't know if, Jackie, you can answer to that?
Once the consumer has signed the agreement, you are bound to pay that amount unless you've cancelled it. If you've signed the agreement.
So whether the membership fee has gone through
or not. I mean, the terms of the agreement will say that you are now due and payable. You need to pay these amounts. Obviously, the National Credit Act does put provisions in place which certain information and letters need to be sent to you before they can list you on the credit bureau. Every person is listed at all times when you have credit agreements. And they would need to send you a letter giving you notice to the fact that they're going to do an adverse classification or listing against your name. And so if a consumer does get listed and they never receive that notice, they can actually challenge that listing at the credit bureau. But consumers should never stop paying if they have a dispute with the credit provider. Because at the end of the day, the listing on the bureau is going to affect you in the long run much worse than the payment to the credit provider in question. So carry on paying and dispute, but don't just stop paying because they do have a right to list you. So,
all right. So uzafuneka ehlele ebhatala until i-dispute yakhe ilungiswe. For now, let's take another commercial break. Please stay with us.
Consumers, we feel that they are not
please give me the email address. I'm sorry.
It's complaints,
Welcome back to Sabugale Nkubo Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right, and we're coming to you live on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Tulani, let me come to you. Lento uqale ngothetha ngayo isaqala inqubo yokubana umthetho ukhona okhusela i-consumers, kodwa consumers do have a responsibility.
It's quite true, madam, because as I said, a consumer yonke into ifuna imflowele. It's in our nature. And as soon as it comes crunch time, it is only then we start thinking of the National Credit Act Office, the commission and so forth. Now, just to, again, a lot has been said, just to quickly give the other options also of getting out of this contract. A simple is that since you were given a page, a mall, now all of a sudden you get a contract that is how many pages? 18 pages. Each and every paragraph, initially, when you sign a contract, there are those clauses that you need to initial. Number one. Number two, there should be a signature. So just to help the NCR office also with their investigations in the future, request the actual contract from these people, request the client to assign his signatures, AZ3. Take these two things, put them on the table, compare the signatures. As soon as the signatures are different, that is fraud. Therefore, each client can go ahead and open a criminal case, or the NCR can assist in that regard. That's the simplest way of getting out of a contract. And a perfect example is when somebody steals a profile, your ID, they go and open the accounts and so forth. And the next thing, these creditors, the only simplest way is that go with affidavit. From affidavit, you give it to a bureau, you give it to the credit grantor, they draw the profiles, go compare even the photo on the ID for that matter. So that is the quickest way of getting out as a quick as contract. But also, in this show, I'd love for us in the future, where we can just celebrate as to how responsible are we as consumers. You know, what have we learned? I mean, the show has been going on for years now, and yet we always complaining about the same thing over and over. Please, Mdasekaya out there, just take responsibility. Don't overcommit yourself. Funda in the Tonga go get somebody who can explain it in the language. I found in English and explain it in Xhosa. And I'm quite sure after a year I will be in talks in the NCR, whereby also we can just see how can we take acts Zetu and translate them into Xhosa, Zulu, and so forth. Right. So that's my future goal. Jeremiah,
but we do have a caller on the line for now. Caller, welcome to the program. Okay.
Hello.
Hi. Nthetha nabantata?
Uthetha nomashona.
Hello, Dad.
Yeah. Yesizwambe ngifuna ukubeka le ndawo. Lapha eLimpopo ngisebenza eLimpopo kodwa Eastern Cape.
Wena.
Inenzeka ndayo kwabuild it ndathenga impahla lapha khona. Uma ngithenga ngiyachota kumpahla kwakhe. So bathi bangandinantsika ngesikweliti. Mandize ne-payslip sami so ndeza naso. Uma sendinantsika yonke into bathi kizawudonsa emsebenzini ku-payslip yami. Uma sendilapha emsebenzini ngolesithathu evekini imali eyi-980 iyadonsa kwi-account yami kwi-3 e-FNB. Okay, ndiyeka. Ngolesine kuphinde futhi 3 iyadonsa imali eyi-490. Ndifonele lo sisi endandidibene naye ebhilshiti ithi angayazi le nto. So ngolwesihlanu ndiye ebhenkini nandifika abayazi ebhenkini ukuthi njelaphi le nto. Uma ndinafike ebhenkini bafike bazawuzama ibuyele nyani imali yami ibuyele. Uma seyibuyele ndifonela abantu bakwa-Rail Football bathi bandibhatalele impahla kwa-Billship It. So bathi ke ngabo aba so ngonandenza wrong andike pha kwakuthe imali ezawudozwa kumi 600. So ngonana bona ndikuzwa lela ntsika niyenzayo and aninazi nipha apho nikho bathi basemuntu. Still now andikababoni babaphi. So ke bandisendele nazike account ndabhatala kulo account. Uma ndibhatala ndiyabhatala ke namanje bathi imali yami ayibonakali. So ngisho ukuthi ke nani sincedeni kakhulu apha kwezinantsika kwezinantsika ngoba basingena kwezibhilidini bafike bayifihle bangaqondi ba ikhona inantsika inkamela ekhoya kanti sabonkameli.
Enkosi kakhulu kotata uMashona ingangabi into sithetha ngayo namhlanje kodwa principle is one usayina kuthathelwa imali yakho ungathini kutata uMashona?
Utata, there's one point you mentioned that is quite important. I'm not going to touch on the company. But kunezi company ngaphandle ezithanda ukuthi sithenge ityala. As soon as you get a call eclaim ba sithenge ityala lakho from kwa Orange kwa Apile, you should know elo tyala libolile. In English is prescribed debt. Now, how do we prove that? If no payment for a period of 3 years, if no acknowledgement of debt was signed, if no judgment taken, elo tyala libolile. And since singabantu sonke, you don't have to go to court to prove that to the bureaus. You call the very same people about this and request them, give me a statement for the past 3 years. And failure for them to give you that, that's when we are going to be road. Listen, I've requested, and therefore I'm disputing on this basis. I'm one of those victims of the account that I did not even know about. And the general thing, the one thing that they have all in common is accounts. They're all 4, 5 years older. And the National Credit Act stipulates very well, you know, the lady will agree with me, prescription, how does it come into place and so forth. So Utata, yes, that's a very important point he touched on. So that's all I just want to advise regarding that.
Uyatsho kodwa naye bana uye wakwazi ufonela umuntu but lo muntu akazi bakwenzeka ntoni na ngale program
Well, in terms of imali edebitwa today, tomorrow, clearly one can pick up ukuthi there's fraudulent activities going on now because now contract angeke stipulate ukuthi now ngizakuthengisela le glass lamanzi and you're going to be paying me 5,000 per month, but all of a sudden I'm busy deducting 1,000 rands every single day at 3:30 as he puts it. Obviously that is fraudulent, number one. Number two, how come you debit the money and all of a sudden you complain the money is back into your account? Kubani only access your details zakhe, which brings me back to that point, your credit card. Utata lobeke shares. Beware your credit cards in. If I show you my credit card, I'm basically giving you a PIN number yam. A credit card is like that. So obviously, whoever that was debiting the money had the direct access to your account, they got data. So we need to be careful as to what do we disclose regarding e-wallet data and so forth.
Briefly, Utata funeka thini ngoku?
I think, you know, much as consumers are expected to be responsible and taking into account that financial literacy amongst majority of our people is also quite a challenge. I think financial institutions such as banks to a certain extent have also have to carry some responsibility. I think with respect to the complaining issue is that he's getting debit orders, you know, that he doesn't even know where they're coming from. I mean, from a bank's point of view, the bank should have some kind of a mandate to actually debit his account. There must be some kind of an authorization signature or perhaps a recorded, you know, confirmation that that particular, you know, debit order can go through.
All right.
It's not sufficient for the bank to say, look, we'll reverse it and tomorrow the figures of the account are configured differently and it goes through. The bank should need to be able to demonstrate to him to say, we have on your profile a signature that you sign on that day at this place that suggests we give X, Y, and Z an authority, then we can deduct
money. All right, let's hold it there. We do have Dino from Free State. Dino, welcome to the program.
How are you, sir? How are you, ma'am?
I'm well, thanks. How are you, Dino?
I'm fine, I'm fine. You know what, there's something that I'm not happy about. I mean, my wife called earlier, but I think she didn't state the things the way it happened clearly. What happened is that, I mean, these Flexi Club people, they misled us, me and my wife. They met my wife in town at the mall. They gave her a scratch card. They said, no, go and scratch this card. Whatever you find there in the card that you have won, you come back to the hall, then you will meet us there, then we will give you those prizes. Now my wife came with those scratch cards and we scratched it only to find that we won a free holiday. Now we went to the hall and we met this other gentleman. He took us and we sat down and said, no, we have won a free holiday and NAS is going to give us a free holiday around South Africa. But there's another option that, I mean, if we want to, we can go even to overseas or anywhere outside the country. But now he said, no, for the free holiday to be activated, there's forms that needs to be filled up. Now he carried on filling up the forms and he said, okay, you guys are going to have to sign this form so that, I mean, your free holiday can be activated. Then now we signed the form. Now I asked him to say, I mean, tell me those forms that, I mean, we're busy signing now, and they're going to put us in trouble. Now he said, no, everything that we're signing is actually in our favor. And this thing that we're signing, we're going to have to pay amount of 600 monthly if we want to become like permanent members. So that, I mean, we will get shares and we will be having a flexibility of booking holidays, even outside the country or around South Africa. The only thing that we will have to pay is just our transport. But when it comes to accommodation, there's nothing that we will have to pay if we pay the amount of 645 monthly. But now he went on and we signed everything. After then he said, no, we must give him an amount of 1,300. Then I said, no, I don't have money now as we're speaking. He said, no, if you don't have money now, there's no way that your free holiday can be activated. You need to become a member first, then that's when your free holiday will be activated. Then I said, okay, now currently I don't have money, but I will have money maybe in 3 months to come. Then he said, no, take my banking details or this Flexi Club. Whenever you have got money, you must deposit that amount so that you can activate it. Because without activation, you're not a member yet. Then I asked them about cancelling to say, what if I change my mind? I don't want to become a member anymore or to take this free holiday. He said, no, you can cancel anytime.
All right.
Later on, they tried to deduct only to find that there was no money in my bank account. It was only 200.
All right, Masibambe apho ke tata. I think we understand where he's coming from. Please don't go away. Welcome back. Siqhubeke kaloku ngengxoxo yethu. Phambi koba siye evenkleni, we did speak to Tino and he was telling us about his story. But what we can highlight about his story is that he asked questions, but still at the end of the day, they were tricked. What should he do now?
What I think we should congratulate Tino on is for asking the questions, because a lot of consumers don't. But you have to read the contracts as well that are in front of you. Now, we understand, and I think it's come out today, that this is the general trend and this is what's happening. Consumers are getting misrepresented. And the documents that they're signing are watertight. So therefore, I would always urge a consumer, number one, don't give your credit card to anyone. Number two, ask the right questions and look at the contract. Every single contract will have a cancellation clause. It will give you the dates that the agreement is going to start. Yes, the documents are long, but have a look out for that. Have a look at, how do I cancel this? Don't take someone's word for it. You're signing it. Make sure and see that it's
in fact,
the
if
truth.
they force you to sign right then and there, you should just leave it.
Step away.
Because you won't
No
have time to
prize,
read
no
a document that
prize,
big.
No prize is worth signing and getting yourself into this kind of trouble. Step away. You have the right to ask questions. You have the right to read before you sign. It's actually your duty to yourself and to your family to read and understand what you're getting yourself into.
All
So
right.
step away. Don't take the prize.
Jeremiah, how are you actively helping people? Yes, we've flooded with all of these questions, but is there a success story?
Definitely. I think that's very, very key to actually address. We have been inundated with these complaints, and then we have actually formulated systems in the commission whereupon we would accumulate a number of generative complaints, similar complaints which are specific to a particular scheme. And then we would organize what we call conciliation. Those are your normal setup where we call consumers and we call and suppliers on the other side to try and mediate as to how can this particular complaints be resolved, especially in instances where you have about 15 complaints where all the consumers are saying we were misled and all we want as a redress is to actually cancel this particular contract. Then we would engage both parties. And we have had quite significant successes in the past where consumers were able to be released from those particular contracts. There are instances where monies have been paid back, especially where consumers are able to demonstrate that there was some element of misleading marketing tactic that was used in trying to lure them into this contract. So I would encourage consumers to actually approach our office and to lodge complaints. But more importantly, I think consumers should not wait and sit on this particular problems until the financial the financial costs are actually have increased over the months, and it's only at the instances where they have been sued, it's only they expect us to intervene because we don't have jurisdiction to challenge cost decisions.
Umthetho omtsha CPA uyawakhusela amalungelo abantu, kodwa consumers have a responsibility, because I think after everything we've said today, you must know you have a responsibility as well. Briefly, xa sesivalelisa uzawuthini kubabukeli?
Well, abantu basekhaya pha ngaphandle, number one is that let us not overcommit. Because if you're not going to overcommit yourself, you're unlikely to meet up like as you saw. Number two, if you have committed, respect the commitment yakho and pay it. Because at the end of the day, even if tomorrow if you're not taking more, if you're not taking andoni, that account is committed is going to be the one also charge of you. Are you a good payer? Are you a bad payer? So whatever that they've committed on already right now, please just carry on, because at the end of the day, should you have a judgment at it's more expenses for you. You have to get the correspondence that can get rid of your judgment. So yeah, let's just stop committing right now. If you have committed, and start afresh, That's it.
And we now come to the end of today's show. We would like to thank our guests for making time to be on the show. Please join us again next Friday for another consumer topic of the week from 1:30 to 2:30 in the afternoon. Now, for repeats of Yilungelo Lakho's shows, please tune into SABC 1 every Monday from 9:30 in the morning to 10:30. Kindly email your thoughts about this program to consumer@sabc.co.za or send us a fax to 011-714-6420. Alternatively, catch us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. From me, Susanda Jonas, and the entire team, it's goodbye. Nibe nexesha elimnandi.
Timpolumpo, aungela, wimganwa.